Hey fellow moto travelers, today we go over how to install the Givi SR357 top case mount on an FJR1300, starting right now. Before we start, here are a few quick notes. This rack is specific for the FJR1300 and doesn't apply to any other bike. It's being installed on a 2015 model, but could apply to other years as well. Make sure to check with Givi to confirm. Here's what you're going to need: a socket wrench and sockets, hex keys or hex sockets, pliers or a standard wrench, potentially a few extra washers than what they provide. Now let's get started. Unpack the rack and separate all of the components. Make sure to check that you received all the hardware listed on the instructions. If you're missing anything, stop and contact Givi to receive the missing parts. Now the first thing you'll have to do is remove both of your seats by first unlocking with the key and then removing like you normally would. Before installing the rack, you need to remove the stock rack. You'll do that by removing the 3 bolts on the top of the rack and the 2 bolts that were underneath the rear seat. You can then simply remove that part from your bike by lifting up. You then begin the installation by inserting 2 32mm spacers to the front of the bike and the single 21mm spacer to the rear. Now many people have found that the rear spacer leaves too much space once the rack is placed on top. To help with this, place the extra washers on the top of the rear spacer. Then make sure that the rack is level with all of the spacers and doesn't have to be bent when tightening. Now place the rack on top of the spacers, ensuring the holes line up. And then insert the 2 supplied 45mm screws with 2 14mm washers up front and the single 35mm screw with a 14mm washer in the back. Then loosely tighten down in a triangle pattern. Do not fully tighten yet. Before you tighten all the way, insert the 2 20mm screws with 14mm washers into the rack near the rear seat and loosely tighten those. Once everything feels good and is aligned, tighten down all 5 screws. Now place and align the 4 rubber dampeners over the holes on the rear of the rack and place the adapter plate on top. Insert 4 25mm screws with 6mm washers through the top holes. Then from the bottom, screw on 4 sets of the following: a 1mm spacer, a rubber washer, a 20mm washer, and an M6 nut. While using a wrench or pliers to hold the nuts in place from the bottom, tighten the 25mm screws from the top. Once you've tightened everything, place the 4 bolt caps over the holes on top. Test out the rack with your Givi case, and that's it, you're all done. You now have yourself a brand new Givi rack. Now load your case up and get riding. We hope that helped and want to thank you for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Also comment or ask questions below. And please share with others if you think it might help them. Thanks for joining us this time on MotoTravelUSA. Now let's go explore.